Hi, I'm Nanette Lankford.
And I'm Tony Lankford, and you're watching Tony Lankford's Downtown, the Actors Lounge.
Quiet on the set. Take one.
Tell us about what you do and why you do it.
What I do, I'm a professional actor and have been for about 30 some odd years now. I also am fortunate enough to be one of these folks who teach. I teach a great deal. I'm an associate professor at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. I'm the head of the acting program there. It's my 26th year. And I teach primarily acting studio, and I also direct. But I get my greatest joy from teaching. So I'm in the classroom teaching primarily first-year students. I also teach seniors. And so what I do is I teach. I introduce students to the demands of theater. I give them primarily their first introduction to conservatory training, and that's what I do.
Tell us, how long have you been doing that?
I've been connected with the Freedom Theater for the past 36 years. I came here in 1972. I was drafted in 1969, got out of the Army after 2 years, and was always thrilled with the work of Sidney Poitier on film. It just sort of mesmerized me, is what he would do and say.
How important do you think it is to be involved with the Freedom Theater?
I think it's extremely important, and one of the reasons, of course, is because it's an institution in the community that has a strong history, is viable, is bringing very positive, invested things to the community for the entire community, primarily the youth. Not just the youth. Obviously the youth are important because they're leaders of tomorrow, but more importantly, it's an institution, and institutions need to be upheld and need to continue to grow within the community. It takes the arts and it creates for them a platform for life skills, developing fantastic images of who they are as people. It creates within them a sense of citizenry. They want to do things with their lives. A good percentage of the students who come to Freedom Theater go on to institutions of higher learning. Not necessarily all of those folk are going to be actors and dancers and singers. Some of them will be. But more importantly, they'll be productive citizens who are making a contribution to the community.
Now, when the young kids come to you, what type of attitudes do they have?
Some of them are very, trepidatious about, studying the arts. Some young men are very trepidatious about putting on tights and feeling that their body is exposed. However, so you get that varied response, but you know that what you're doing is building insight. Sometimes you have to deconstruct in order to construct. So you're deconstructing sometimes an attitude that can be negative, an attitude that just doesn't feel that he or she has the right to be successful. And you see these things change over a period of months, over a period of weeks, sometimes over a period of days. And the faculty here at Freedom Theater has done tremendous work relative to changing the mindset of many, many students.
Now, let's talk a moment about deconstruction.
Yeah.
How do you do that, and how do the kids respond to that?
Many times you have to start from where the students are. The students might not be interested in a rigorous kind of sense of what you're trying to lay on them. So you have to come from where they are. You may have to talk about that. You may have to talk about, do you see the value in this? Do you see that these things are going to ultimately enhance your life? And you have to buy them. You have to make them believe it. You have to allow them, you give them the opportunity to believe. And the Freedom Theater, with the curriculum that we've developed over the years in terms of how it motivates and how it creates life skills, how it creates positive reinforcement of who they are as people, it's something that students, thousands of students at this point, have bought into and believe. And so you see this change. You see this human being transforming, and that's a wonderful thing to see.
In your opinion, how important is the arts in schools today?
The arts are, and we've been saying this for years, and I think that people are just beginning to believe it. The arts are the thing that sort of is it's almost like the bricks are there and the art is like the mortar. The art holds things together because it reinforces humanity. It reinforces in a kid the understanding of sensitivity, what another person is going through, empathy. It promotes empathy. It promotes kind of a self-worth. And sometimes these things are missing in the school systems. And art, calls on a person to understand the sense of vulnerability, sense of sensitivity, how the other guy feels. And so art, on any level, I think, should be introduced and should be maintained in the school systems.
How important do you think self-worth is to a young person?
If we don't have self-worth, we don't have people who can look into a person like Barack Obama, who is running for president, and that person looking at them can reflect and say, I want to be just like that guy. I can be like that guy. It's possible to be like Barack Obama or any other person that you feel is a role model for you. And this starts with number one, being involved in an environment that is positive, that promotes that, and allows you to sort of participate in this whole concept of self-worth. If we don't have self-worth, you don't have too much.
Do you think the kids learn from each other rather than just from one instructor?
Good point. I think they certainly do learn from each other. And good instructors create that kind of ambience, create that kind of environment where that kind of reinforcement from one to the other is going on. So you learn how to stroke students, you learn how to make a student feel that he or she is successful where they feel they're not successful. You understand the value of patience. You understand the value of creating a homogeneous atmosphere, environment where the whole concept of being positive is the normal way of life, not like a strange thing. And so students begin to sort of see this from each other and begin to, get the vibe that it's okay to feel good about yourself. It's a very positive, growth-producing thing.
Let's talk a moment about your acting program.
Sure.
How does a young person who is interested in acting get involved? What are some of the steps that they need to do?
Well, what they would do is, number one, the interest is there. That's important. The Freedom Theater now has a thing called, they do a thing called sample classes. And the sample classes is basically an introduction to basically what a class would be like. And so you're in a classroom setting, and the instructors take you through certain paces. And based on that particular class, we get a chance to see you work in a classroom setting. Your parents get a chance to see you work in a classroom setting because the parents are there watching, and the guardians are there watching you go through these paces. And this gives you a very good indication of the kind of work that we'd be doing at Freedom Theater. And then, of course, you'd have to talk to admissions folks and talk about coming into the program.
But you said you're a director.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about your directing career.
Sure.
What type of shows, what type of plays have you directed?
I've directed quite a few plays at the University of the Arts as well as Freedom Theater. I've done, I'll be directing in April. I'll be directing, for instance, at the University of the Arts. I'll be directing the Cider House Rules, Part 1, I believe. I directed 6221, a play about the move tragedy that happened here in Philadelphia. I've directed here at Freedom Theater things like Zoo Man and the Sign by Charles Fuller. I've directed everything from classical work to contemporary work. I enjoy directing because I'm an actor and I get a chance to sort of talk to the actors in a different way. I'm primarily an actor, but I certainly have enjoyed directing tremendously.
What is it you feel when you direct? When you're working with actors, when you're working with blocking, when you're working with timing, that sort of thing, and you're in the house, what do you feel from it?
I feel, number one, as a director, I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility because I feel that it's all my responsibility, because what I'm ultimately creating is an image. I'm creating a story. I'm creating the path for the actors to travel. All the blocking, all of the nuance in terms of behavior is part of my responsibility. Obviously, the actor brings that to the table, but that's a big part of my responsibility to make sure that that stuff kind of lays out there so that the audience can can experience the transformation, can see the travel, can see the conflicts that the characters are going through. So all of that is my responsibility, and it's my responsibility to, number one, share those images with the cast, with the tech, with everybody around me, because other than that, it's just in me. So sometimes directors have to really make sure that that message emanates from them and not just sort of stays inside of them. So I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility.
In your opinion, how hard is it to do that?
It's extremely difficult because you're number one, you're sharing your innermost thoughts with this play or whatever that is you're imparting on, and then you have to manage all of it. You have to manage it. You have to manage people. You have to manage people's times. You have to make sure that everybody feels that they're making a very critical contribution. You got to make sure that artists feel that they're making a contribution, that the designers feel that they're making a contribution. You got to make sure that there's a real sensitivity there, there's a real sense of communication there, that there's a real need for this play to happen, that you want to say something socially, politically, and that the actors are challenged. The actors have to be challenged. Other than that, I don't think it works, because people have to grow from the experiences. I work with obviously a lot of students, so we're talking about seniors and sophomores and people here at Freedom Theater. The students have to be challenged, and you have to make sure that you're constantly creating ways for them to grow, and that's one of my responsibilities as a director. As a director, I'm constantly telling stories about myself, because that was the way that I was instructed many years ago through John Allen and Bob Leslie, and they would constantly talk about their lives, and I said, it's important that you live a life, that you have a life that you can reference. To reference, you obviously as an actor, some of it is imagined, but some of it is also quite real. So it's not a 9-to-5 thing.
Right. Hold that thought. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about more about directing and more about reference. This is Tony Lankford for Tony Lankford's Downtown. We'll be right back after this commercial.
People ask the question, what's a rock and roller? And I tell them, we all like a bit of the good life. Some the money or the fame, but a real rock and roller wants a lot.
There's no school like the old school, and I'm their master. Right, let me tell you how this works. You're going in to drink, and I'm going to have a cup of tea. I just hope for your sakes you can hold your breath for as long as it takes my kettle to boil.
There ain't no respecters of the old school.
What's it going to cost me?
7 million euros.
Call the accountant. I need 7 million euros.
7 million.
Well, what do you want?
You.
Rock and roller.
Rock and roller?
Rock and roller.
Rock and roller.
You guys are gonna take care of him?
What do you think we are, gangsters?
Rock and roller.
Don't worry, he can't defend himself, he's got no head.
You were saying, being a director, it's important that you reference things that happen in your own life to work effectively or to communicate effectively to actors and getting your point across. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Sure. I think it's important that number one, that we live life, and actors, directors, choreographers, writers, there's this element of your life that in many ways can correspond to some things that you're doing directly with the script. And you can use that. You can use that because if there is not that kind of insertion of your sensitivity in the work, I think it falls on deaf ears, and it gives me a sense of value that I'm referencing my life. Now I know when to reference my life and when not to reference my life.
Let's go to the other side now. We talked about directing. Let's talk about the actor side.
Sure.
As an actor working with a director, how much of you do you put into your role, do you figure?
It requires a certain amount of feel. There are certain parts of characters that I do that would be very interesting for me to use aspects of myself. There's sometimes aspects of myself would not be but not be erased. So you're constantly fighting against this membrane. This is me. This is the character. This is me. And sometimes there are parts of me that comes through. There are parts of me sometimes that just has to be right there, where you bring the reality but not the truth of it. So you're constantly dealing with that membrane as an actor, and you got to know when to do that.
Do you feel that it's important for an actor in a role to open up all the time, totally?
When you say open up, how do you mean that?
Expose yourself.
Not all the time. That's why you have the skill set to be an actor, so that all aspects of me is not always necessary for me to sort of do this performance. But there's some aspects of me that are necessary, but you have to have the ability and the will and the risk to be open, to be fully engaged. But ultimately, acting is about the emotional reservoir and the intellectual reservoir, and the bringing together these two things. And you're working with the director, and if you're trained, if you have the ability to sort of communicate thoughts and feelings accurately connected to the circumstances that you're involved in, you'll be okay.
What were some of the things that you went through to become an actor?
A lot of discovery of who I am, a lot of me dealing with darker aspects of myself, dealing with parts of myself that I never dealt with before. Acting is about truth. Acting is about going places inside that you don't normally go, because my responsibility is to project that through character and through the work that we do on the stage. So a lot of acting is, once again, deconstructing, constructing, and being informed, finding out how you deal with people, finding out who your fear is, what you're willing to expose, what you're willing to not to expose, emotionally, socially, physically, spiritually. In acting, all of this stuff is happening at the same time. You're a human being. And so the whole concept of just learning how to deepen your humanity, how to open up, how to be responsive, and then, of course, the skill set to do it vocally, to do it physically, to do it correctly, so that you don't hurt yourself. Until they figure out another way to do it, it's just no other way to do it. I mean, I audition. It's a necessary evil sometimes that can be extremely exposing, sometimes can be extremely trepidatious and fearful for people. But at a certain point, you understand that an audition is the only way that you can introduce yourself. I guess there are circumstances where you're invited sometimes to give in a role, but very seldom. So you look at an audition as a job interview. It's a job interview, and that's the only way you can do it. You get up there and let people see how you behave, how you look in the space, and how you handle yourself.
So, Mr. Hobbs, tell us about the film work that you're doing.
The film work that I've done, that I'm doing, and that I've done, I've had the opportunity to do some film work, some independent stuff, some stuff that I feel very good about. I just finished doing a film with one of my colleagues at the university this year. It was Steve Saylor, a piece called God's Country. We'll see what happens with that. You'll probably enter it on a lot of international film festivals and national film festivals. In 2007, I was fortunate enough to be in a film directed by Bill Duke called Cover, that starred Vivica Fox, and I think Patti LaBelle had a cameo, Lou Gossett, Maya, Leon, the actor. I have a nice little piece in it as well. I'd like for people to see it. It's called Cover. One can rent it on Netflix, and you can all get it in TLA and things, video stores. It was a joy working with somebody like Bill Duke. I'd seen him for years, as an actor. But he's quite a sensitive director. It's a very controversial piece, AIDS related, but it's a piece that people should see, because it really does inspire some dialogue, and it creates an interesting kind of interesting tension, I think, that happens when one sees the film. It's called Cover, directed by Bill Duke.
What role did you have in it?
In the film, I am a reverend of a church, and I have a number of contacts with the young man who's going through, and the young lady who's going through, the two leads who are going through the real conflict of the film. So I felt really good about what we ultimately did.
That's good. It's a very important subject.
Yes.
And it's also at the same time a very sensitive subject.
Absolutely.
Particularly to the African American community.
Absolutely.
And perhaps films like that need to be in more abundance.
Absolutely.
So we can all see and get a feel for what's really going on.
But in the past, I've done things like 12 Monkeys, and these are all the ones I'm mentioning are principal roles. I was in 12 Monkeys with Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis. I was a Baltimore police officer in that. Up Close and Personal, I did a little 2-point scene with Robert Redford. I was a warden of the prison. And some other things too, you know, that kind of escape me right now, but I felt very good about the film opportunities I've had.
Let me ask your opinion
Sure.
about something. As far as black films and
Sure.
black cinema is concerned these days, where do you think the direction is? Where do you think we're going with that, and where would you like us to go with it, in your opinion?
I think that black cinema in particular and black stories, which I think there's a constant need for, I think the market is big enough to take so many different things, and I think that we are right now seems to be sort of just stilted, not really moving in any particular direction. And I think a lot of it is predicated, of course, and when you see people like Spike Lee who comes along, who does things like the St. Anna story, the 92nd Infantry, you know, you begin to realize that there's an abundance of stories, there's a big market, and there's a need to tell these stories, but we seem to be sort of hovering and just not really moving. You see things like Tyler Perry, which I think are excellent. I think it's part of the choices that we have. You know, I love Tyler Perry's work. I think he says something. I think he's about something. I think there needs to be more dialogue between what he does and what another serious filmmaker does. I think there's a way to make some kind of communion there. So I don't put anything down. I think that the table is big enough for us to have a choice of so many different kinds of things. But it seems like we're just, in terms of black films, we're either not being able to get produced, or even the independent market seems to be freezing up, and we're just not able to sort of say all the things that I think we want to say and we should say and we have to say, because this is a world where everybody's got to get a chance to say something.
I think Tyler Perry's work is extraordinary. I think that, you know, I respect his body of work. And at the same time, not necessarily liking certain subject matters that he touches upon. I think one of his best movies, in my opinion, was Daddy's Little Girls. You know, I thought that was an excellent movie, and I thought it moved out of the box of the Medea thing.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Although that's had many a following, and still does. But I thought Daddy's Little Girls took him to another level.
Absolutely.
And I really didn't get a chance to see The Family That Prays.
I'm going to see that.
You know, but I heard that that's pretty good too, and it has Kathy Bates in it as well.
Stepping across.
Yeah, and also Tyler himself is going to be in the upcoming Star Trek movie, which he's playing the
It's not Medea.
no, he's not. He's playing the commander of Starfleet Command, that sort of thing. So that's another level that he's going, which brings me to the fact.
And he just created the new studios.
That's correct. Yeah, we just read about that in the Tribune not long ago. And I think him being in a science fiction movie is good, because it takes him to yet another level.
That's right.
And that's something else that I think I haven't seen many black films that took on the task of being a science fiction movie. You know, they're very, you know.
And we're into science fiction. My wife loves science fiction, and we need to see those kinds of venues and those kinds of stories investigated. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Would you recommend it as a career for anyone?
Only if one loves it. Only if one is absolutely inseparable and loves it. There's a love for it. There's a passion for it. And everybody doesn't have that. I mean, we live in a world where these images are put in front of us, and you know, we want to be like that image. But many people I found, you know, really don't have the wherewithal to really sort of study. I mean, I think that actors have to study. I advocate study. I think that you have to study. You have to study diligently. You have to be exposed to good training. You have to be exposed to good work. You have to be exposed to ultimately a technique. And it's not for everybody. We live in a world today where it looks like it's for everybody, because we're always it's always there for us to see. But Ultimately, I think it comes down to passion. I mean, the average income for an actor in this country is somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 a year. That's not a lot of money. I mean, I belong to either three of those unions, and that's $2,000 to $5,000 a year is not a lot of money. I'm in a university where students come and pay over $30,000 a year to study, and some of these students will be prominent, you know, and ultimately find a way to create a profession. Some of the students will not. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. So it's not for everybody. Acting is one of those things where everybody feels that they can do it but everybody can't be a brain surgeon. But everybody feels sometimes that they can act, and sometimes that's a good thing because it's open, it's exposed, it's human, but it's not for everybody.
So what advice would you give to young people that want to be an actor, that want to be a director, that want to go into entertainment, that want to go on the stage, film, TV? What advice would you give them?
That if an individual is interested in this kind of thing, that you should seek out a mentor, seek out someone who knows at least to give you some direction into training. Once again, I'm advocating training. If you don't know what to do, one of the things that you should do is read everything that you can possibly read. Read the paper, read books, be an insatiable reader, and ultimately feel good about yourself. And if you're not a competitive person, it helps to be competitive. Let your conscience be your guide. And my thing is that you have to train. My thing is you have to be in a place where you can get some good, solid training, whether it be a university, whether it be a place, of course, like the Freedom Theater, which offers some of the finest training. I got all my training from here. Whether it be a place like the Freedom Theater or whatever it be, and then once you have trained, once you have begun to train, don't let anybody else dictate what success is for you. You determine what success is. Now, if success means that I've got to do 6 months of training or a year of training, and I'm going to even be in a play, I mean, and then I'm going to do a scene, that's successful. And you should feel good about that. And don't let anyone sort of say, oh, that was a little thing you did, that was cute, but that was extremely successful. It's an obstacle that you overcame. You got through something to get to something else. So it's a lot, but you know, one of the things is training.
Mr. Johnny Hobbs, Jr., it was a pleasure having you on the show today. Those are very encouraging words, and I hope that our viewers, or at least one of our viewers, listen to you and got an idea of what you're talking about and will pursue their dreams. It's a pleasure having you on the show. I'm Tony Lankford for Tony Lankford's Downtown, the Actors Lounge. We'll see you next time.